Good afternoon. This is Spencer Pylan again with the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. It's about 1:01, so we'll go ahead and get started. I serve as VP of Government Affairs with our chamber, and every week we have the privilege of hosting Thursday roundtables from 1 to 2 o'clock, where we're able to provide you, our members, and members of our community with insight, information, and resources so we can rebound from COVID-19. Today we have an exciting program put together, and we have two really engaging speakers who are going to provide us with some information through a fireside chat. Our first speaker is Mr. Rick Beasley. Rick is, in addition to being first vice chairman of the Greater Miami Chamber, he serves as executive director for Career Source South Florida. His role is to get people back to work and to help keep them employed. Our second speaker hails from District 37, Senator Jose Javier Rodriguez. He fights for you and me in Tallahassee, and I'm actually one of his constituents in addition to many of you on the call. We're grateful to have him working here for us in the community and in Tallahassee as well. And our topic today is layoff aversion. Layoff aversion is resources and ways for employers to keep their workforce employed throughout this time of COVID-19. The way this call is going to work is they will both give some presentations, and then they'll have a discussion on resources available to employers and their employees. If you have questions, please submit them through the Q&A function. We'll have staff monitoring those questions that are submitted in written form, and then after the fireside chat between the Senator and Rick, I'll come back on the screen and moderate a discussion with your questions. Again, thank you for joining us today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Mr. Rick Beasley. Rick?
Well, good afternoon, Spencer. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this roundtable. On behalf of Career Source South Florida, I hope everyone is staying safe. Our goal as an agency, one is to provide assistance to our community to help them get reemployed. Our senator will be speaking later, but he will share some of the issues and concerns that he has from his office, but as well as we here in Career Source have of how the unemployment system has not responded in the manner in which we probably would have wanted. Career Source South Florida has stepped up to the challenge of being able to assist our citizens. I've shared this with the senator. We as an agency have dedicated a number of staff and launched what we call a reemployment hub. That reemployment hub is there to provide reemployment assistance in a way that has provided some relief to our community. The first thing just wanted to share with you all is that we launched the reemployment hub in partnership with Mayor Jimenez and also with the Miami-Dade County Library System, the director there, Ray Baker. We're so grateful of our partnership. The reemployment hub was initiated because we wanted to find a way of being able to assist our citizens, have an alternative way of being able to file for their unemployment benefits. And so with that, we were able to offer well over 150,000 paper applications through our library system or through our 13 career centers that we have in Dade and in Monroe County. We've been able to provide or take back and send up to Tallahassee well over 30,000 of those applications, and some of the residents or job seekers that have gotten or picked up the applications have mailed them off for themselves. We also have launched a call center. And that call center is staffed on average about 63 people who take your calls every day to be able to assist and be able to help respond to either doing a pin reset or walking through the process. And I hope the folks who hear my voice, please keep in mind that we're not the Department of Economic Opportunity. We don't do the unemployment insurance side. But our goal there was to be able to help walk citizens through, assist them where we can, take documentation that needs to probably be faxed up to Tallahassee, and we've done it on occasion. But our goal there is to provide some assistance relief to be able to see and chart where one's reemployment application is sitting. The other part of the reemployment hub is what it is. It's for us to find ways to help you get reemployed through our telephone system. I'll give that out. The telephone number I've asked folks to call is 305-929-5855. 1547. Again, that telephone number is 305-929-1547. That number is there to, again, to assist you with either with unemployment insurance, but more importantly, to help you find a job. And so lastly, we've launched Operation Impact, which is an initiative that those who call, and we can get you registered in our program, we'll be able to help you, one, look for employment, or if we can't find employment, we'll get you into training, but also more importantly, be able to provide maybe some support services to you that we can pay up to $1,000, whether it's for your housing, your transportation, utility costs, childcare. But our goal there is to get you reemployed and get you into a job. And we know employers are hiring because of the number of projects we're working on. But our goal as an agency is to assist our community to get reemployed. And we also are there to help employers to avert layoffs. And that's what this discussion is going to be about, are the resources that we have that will help our employers be able to keep their workers, to keep our economy going. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm glad that I'm here with our great senator, and he's got a lot of things to share with you all, so I'm looking forward to the conversation. Yes, Senator, I guess I turn it over to you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Rick Beasley, thank you so much for all the work that you and your team at CareerSource do for us and have been doing for us prior to the pandemic. I also want to thank the Chamber and your membership, not just for having me on today, but also for all the work that you've been doing. When it comes to food security and a lot of the food distribution events that we've been able to do, at least the ones that I have hosted, the Chamber and volunteers from the Chamber have been there. And a lot of the things that we have been trying to do with respect to healthcare, nursing homes, a lot of the business community has been reaching out to help out, even if they aren't directly impacted. So I want to just recognize that and thank you for what you've been doing in this community during the pandemic. In addition, I just want to make a comment and just invite folks to reach out to me and my team, 305-854-0365. If there's anything where I can help, there's a number of things that we have been working on, supporting small businesses. And with respect to the unemployment compensation system that we have here in Florida, overwhelmingly working with employees, but also with employers and a lot of the technical issues that have been going on. I don't need to tell anybody here how bad things have been for out-of-work Floridians. We have seen an unprecedented level of job losses since March. No precedent for the speed with which jobs have been lost. And we are all trying to figure this out, trying to strike that balance of public health and making sure that we can get back to work. But one of the things that's very, very critical is during this period of time, we need to make sure that the unemployment system is functioning, not simply for out-of-work Floridians who desperately need it, but for everybody. And so we've spent a lot of time in my office trying to support out-of-work Floridians. We could talk about that for quite a bit, but the topic of today is layoff aversion. We want to try to support those businesses where there are tools available to avoid layoffs. Most employers are trying to do the right thing by their employees. And, they're trying to make sure they can keep everybody on payroll and health benefits as long as possible. Some have not been able to. Others are at the point where they're trying to have difficult decisions, and others are, trying to hang on as long as possible, forecasting to the future. So again, I want to recognize the work that Rick Beasley and his team at CareerSource have been doing, and for joining this. And the one thing that I'll say before we get to the next part is just that if nothing else, one of the things that I do want to talk about is what's called short-time compensation plans, which in addition to some of the federal assistance are probably one of the best tools for layoff aversion. And I want to thank
Well, Senator, I know you and I have had a number of discussions as some of the ways that employers or even our job seekers could use. And so one of the questions I have for you, sir, is, as you serve the constituents, what are some of the items or the issues that they're facing that we as an agency or even a chamber that we can look at and trying to address, whether it's from um, a job seeker or worker side or the employer side? What are some of the things that we could be doing that at our disposal locally that we have the control and the flexibility to implement?
Well, I think from an overall perspective, one of the things that, again, when we're talking about layoff aversion, what we're trying to do is maintain the relationship between the employer and the employee. Whether that's on the job or if there's a temporary layoff or furlough, that we, can bring the employee, we have the option of bringing the employee back at their option as quickly as possible. But, one of the things during the reopening, quote unquote, economically one of the things that, we haven't had a lot of discussion about, and I've talked to a lot of employees and employee organizations about, is what does a job search really look like in a time of social distancing? A lot of industries, if we're hoping to see them open back up, but in the service sector, a lot of times it relies on in-person contact, kind of pounding the pavement. We're hoping to get to a place where that can happen. But, in a place where, for example, salons and barbershops are going to be by appointment only. They're going to have plexiglass separating customers, things like that. It'd be interesting to see if there's any, if there's any ways to support, to try to figure out what a job search looks like during that time, because obviously not everybody is adept or has resources to sort of the online tools that are typically out there. That's one thing that, we've been talking about, but, really the things that I've been hearing from my constituents are really just some of the things that we can't answer. How long is this going to, how long is this going to go? Et cetera, et cetera. But I think that particularly for those employees that work in places where you can't work remotely, it's just not possible. What does job searching look like, and what does recruitment look like in that environment, especially for folks and industries that are maybe are used to recruiting or hiring in a method that's not purely online?
I'm glad you kind of mentioned that. So I wrote down some ideas as you were speaking. So one of the things I think as career source, what we can do, and we've kind of talked about it, but you've given us a great idea, Senator, of offering workshops to our community, whether it's for resume writing, interviewing, job search through the web environment, because most interviewing is going to happen through Skype or through Zoom or through GoToMeeting. And so I think that's a resource that we as an agency can look at and implement so that we could address how our citizens, our residents are being able to respond in this environment. The other thing I was thinking about, and I got this idea, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due to Mayor Oliver Gilbert. He had texted me about hosting virtual job fairs, and so we're actually looking into doing that. And so again, I'm going to give credit where credit is due to Mayor Oliver Gilbert for that idea and suggestion. There are, as you were talking in terms of the employers, one of the things that we have at our disposal or our toolkit is that when employers are hiring, okay, have them reach out to us in your district or any other district throughout our county, and Dade and Monroe, the areas I cover, but most of my colleagues across the state, because Career Source, we're one of 24 boards. And so what we do have at our disposal as a way of helping the onboarding of their workers, reach out to us to see if we can look at those citizens who are displaced as you're bringing them on that may qualify for our program, so we can cut their costs up to 70% of their training costs. And that training cost is really their wages. And so if you have an employer, as an example, that's paying, let's say, $10 an hour, and we know it's more than that, but right off the top of my head, simple math, because we're here, is to say, okay, we're paying $77 of the 10. And that's what we can do for those employers. Other things that we're looking at, Senator, is that for layoff aversions, as we are going to be working with some of our chambers, and I mentioned that earlier to the leadership of the Greater Miami Chamber, of looking at layoff aversion strategies, of the continuance of the webinars and resource webinars that will help businesses stay afloat. Other components in terms of our dollars for customized training. So for those employers that are repositioning themselves, and that as they reposition and may not have received a loan, well, our dollars may be able to assist if they're retraining or repositioning the staff. So here's an example. There is a spirit company, Victor George, that made vodka. And so I understand that the company repositioned itself and now it's making hand sanitizer. But we have to look at the cost of retraining that staff that went from one component to the other. And so in that regard, I wish we would have known, so we could have been able to provide our dollars to help that company reposition, because they had to retrain the staff, and that training costs and the wages that we pay are the training costs. And so that would have helped that company have the resources to make other investments that is needed. So those are some of the things that we as an agency are looking at, of how we use our training resources to help that employer as they're onboarding, as they're repositioning or retraining their workforce that may be at home or that they're bringing on board. Here's how we can do it. But we have to work with you, Senator, as well as the Greater Miami Chamber and their resources. So I want to kind of share that with you. But I did like the idea of, how do we help our citizens on the interviewing and that. So we're going to launch, and I'm going to give you the credit, and because you got the idea from me, but we're going to launch a series of workshops through Zoom and other media platforms for interviewing, resume writing, interviewing skills in a social media platform. So we're going to do that as well. Okay. Other ideas, any other things that you're hearing in terms of what chambers and other associations could be doing to assist employers in terms of layoff aversion strategies?
Yeah, well, absolutely. One thing, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the short-time compensation plans. Do you think this would be a good time to do it?
Oh, yes. Because it is a great layoff aversion strategy.
Yeah. So one of the primary tools that actually exists right now and is out there, they're called short-time compensation plans. It's effectively a work share program. It's supported by the CARES Act and by state legislation. It's not as well known as it should be. A lot of employers, particularly those who maybe aren't members of local or chambers of commerce, maybe aren't familiar with these, but they have a reputation for being very highly successful. Ours here in Florida has been in place since the 1980s. And the whole idea is that, rather than laying off employees completely, an employer can reduce the hours of some or many in a particular unit and divide the work between them. And obviously, so it's a work share program, but the way that it works is it works through the unemployment compensation system. And those employees that are going on reduced time keep their benefits and health insurance, and they're eligible for a certain amount of unemployment insurance, partial unemployment insurance. And so the way that it works is that an employer puts together a plan, Department of Economic Opportunity signs off on it, and there's certain requirements that we can go over. One of them is that the group of employees, it has to, at least 10% of the unit of employees has to be covered by the plan. The reductions have to be more than 10% of time, but not more than 40%. So between 10 and 40%. The employees have to be close to full-time already. Unfortunately, they have to be permanent employees. So it doesn't work for seasonal employers or employees who work on a piece rate or commission, and they have to otherwise meet the requirements. Again, employers have to maintain all the benefits. And so one of the great things, there's sort of two great things with the CARES Act. One is the CARES Act pays 100% of those short-time compensation benefits that the state of Florida pays out during the calendar year of 2020. So the state of Florida, for us, it's a no-brainer to promote these, right? Because it means that employees who otherwise would have been laid off are working part-time at least and getting, benefits to make up for the lost income. B, it means our employers, have an easier time because they can keep and retain qualified workforce. But C, it costs the state of Florida and our Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund nothing ultimately. But the other thing, and really important, the Department of Labor just came out with guidance that said that you can use these to bring back recently laid off employees. So that is really important. So you can use a short-time compensation plan to, if you had a workforce that was recently laid off, you can use this program to bring them back on a part-time basis, which is great. And I think the last thing that I'll say is, yes, Department of Economic Opportunity has been overwhelmed with the unemployment compensation system. No one is holding that up as a beacon as an example. However, in speaking with the Department of Economic Opportunity, they are seeing obviously an uptick in employers putting these plans together and seeking approval, but they say that they are absolutely keeping within the confines of 15 days. So when an employer submits this, the Department of Economic Opportunity has 15 days to either approve or disapprove with and explain why they disapproved it, and hopefully you can kind of tweak your plan to make it fit. So that's a really important tool. You apply at Florida Jobs through the Connect system.
But Senator, they mentioned it takes up to 15 days, but do they mention on average how long it's been taken to get a turnaround?
They have not mentioned that. They just said that they're within the statutory period. Okay.
And you also mentioned about them being able to use short-time compensation for workers that may have laid off or furloughed. Did they say what that time period was that, if I've laid them off within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, did they give a time period of what that was so that employers who are here, they may have an idea to bring back so that people can utilize this program?
I believe the guidance we got from the Department of Labor is that it could go back as far as February, but please don't quote me on that. Please reach out. I have the Department of Labor letter in front of me. I might consult it. But that guidance came out recently, and I read it this morning again to prepare for today. I believe it goes back as February, but obviously don't be shy about asking if you're an employer in that situation.
Okay, and so in your opinion, this is one of the tools that the state of Florida really has implemented in how, if they have questions, what number should they call in terms of being able to touch base with someone from your office or someone from DEO, or how would you like for the business to hear to get more information?
Absolutely. So for those interested, I'd be happy to, again, provide my number, 305-854-0365. Obviously, I am a legislator. I'm not in the executive branch. I am not administering the program. That's Department of Economic Opportunity. But I'm happy to put you in touch with the folks that are. As I said, Florida Jobs, there is ample information on the website. It's up to date. And again, what they're saying is that once an application is completed, they're not having a problem meeting the 2-week turnaround to either approve it. And again, by statute, if they don't approve it, they've got to give you the reasons. And, again, they have an attitude of trying to work these things out and try to help people utilize this. And, one of the other things that I've heard is that they don't have any complaints about the system or the application. So it seems to be working. Again, these programs have a pretty good reputation nationally, and they're designed as a bridge, right? So if you see that you're going to have to do layoffs, you put together one of these plans, and it's a bridge, with the hope of being able to do better in the future. Now, again, I think Department of Economic Opportunity understands that there's a lot of uncertainty right now, right? Way more than other economic crises. And so To the extent that the crisis is a little open-ended and the company's having trouble predicting, I want to encourage employers, not to be shy about being creative with a plan and just trying to see if you can work with the Department of Economic Opportunity to figure that out. I think there's an understanding that we could predict and model the best we can, but none of us can predict what's going to happen. And one last thing that I want to mention about these, one of the reasons why there's such a benefit is that we do not have the most generous unemployment benefits in the country. I think a lot of people are very aware of that. One of the things too that affects a lot of people is that for partially unemployed Floridians, you can apply for benefits. However, if your income partially employed is more than $333 per week, you get bounced off the system entirely. So one of the reasons why a short-time compensation plan is important for a lot of employees is that you go around those caps, right? And it means that if an employee is on a short-time compensation plan and they otherwise qualify for unemployment, that cap doesn't apply to them. So they'll get a benefit. But the important thing right now is that because of the CARES Act and the pandemic unemployment compensation, every employee that gets $1 of state unemployment between now and July 31 also gets the $600 a week, right? So for employers who want to reduce, who may want, instead of layoffs to try to put together one of these plans, there's a big benefit for their employees potentially between now and July 31, because not only will they not be unemployed, right? But they'll be receiving a little bit more than they otherwise would if without a short-time compensation plan. And for many people, it may not be anything at all, because if their hours are reduced and they're still making $333 an hour, I'm sorry, not an hour, a week, excuse me. I think a lot of us wish that were the pay rate here in Miami-Dade. It is not. But so the point is that there's a benefit in it for the employees and employers specifically right now because of the CARES Act.
So, I want you to kind of say that one part, the last part over again for those employers that, that are on here, this webinar. Again, the item here, the benefit not only for the employer, but for the workers that do the short-time compensation.
Right.
If they, I'm gonna say it and then you make sure I'm saying it. If they participate in the program and their employees are part of that piece, there's a benefit for them as well, because their wages may disqualify them from receiving regular unemployment. Is that correct? Did I say that right? And so by participating in that short
time. Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so without an STC plan, right, typically an employee that applies, if they're partially unemployed, you can apply for unemployment assistance here in Florida. But the way that it works is that earnings are counted against what your benefit would be. So that the way the formula works is effectively, if your earnings are $333 per week here in Florida and you're partially unemployed, let's say, you got reduced 10 hours and you apply for unemployment assistance. If you're still working and making that much money, that's great, but you don't get any unemployment assistance. And because of that, you also don't get the $600 with the CARES Act. However, if you are receiving benefits because your employer put together an approved STC plan, then the way you're getting benefits goes around those limitations. And let's say your benefit your state benefit may be only, $70, $80, $100 per week, because again, you're still working. That's partial benefit. However, because of the CARES Act, that employee will get an additional $600 per week. So, that is also a big benefit for employees from now until July 31. And also employers, we're trying to not let go of employees and again, need a bridge. The one caveat I will mention here, it does affect your experience rating. So putting together an STC plan, really the only negative for an employer is that it affects your tax rate. It basically increases your tax rate by 1%. because the maximum tax rate is basically plus 1% for the unemployment compensation tax rate. That's kind of the only thing that's a negative, frankly, for employers looking at one of these.
Okay. So, Senator, we know we're in this environment. And my question to you is, how can we work with you, the chamber, workforce boards, and others, as we look for the future? How can we design from a state perspective? Because again, we're relying on Washington, D.C. To respond to help us locally, and sometimes it doesn't work as fast enough to really be able to make an impact in our respective communities. So what potential things could we propose to help provide us an incentive for in the future for our businesses in Miami-Dade and the state of Florida to avert layoffs? Or have you looked at anything legislatively wise? And then how can we as a chamber assist you in being able to address this going forward?
Well, that's a great question. I appreciate that. I think a few things. One is, one other thing that's immediate, the CARES Act came along with $100 million nationally for states to apply to basically support, maybe shore up their short-time compensation programs and promote them. DEO here in the state of Florida has been so overwhelmed with the unemployment system that I don't think they've gotten around to trying to do that. And that's one of the things I've spoken to them about. But right now, is when we need it most. But right now, it's when they're in a difficult time. So one thing that is kind of occurring to me as we're, the last week or two is that we may need some flexibility maybe from the Department of Labor. Maybe if there's another agency or another way to get those dollars out there to promote. One of the other things, too, is that some economists have said, listen, the requirement in the short-time compensation plans that it be more than 10% layoffs, but no more than 40%, that may need to be adjusted. Maybe we need to go below 40% because the temporary economic hit for employers might be more. And I think the last thing, and I think this is something that you and I have spoken about, there are layoff aversion grant programs that exist. And in other states, they've created very robust, standing programs, right? Not just for the pandemic, that, and some of them have adapted to, for example, look at how do we, again, not everybody can work from home, but some of these programs in other states have provided grants. So it's not a loan, just a straight up grant. If, for example, there's some software that's going to enable you to allow your employees to work from home, whereas otherwise you might have to lay them off or put them in a situation that maybe is unsafe during a pandemic, things like that, maybe, and also those funds are also for example, retrofitting a workplace so that it is safe for people to return to work, spaced out or, with equipment, et cetera. And frankly, it's not alone. And I think a lot of us would be okay with those sorts of grants if they're used for the purpose of preventing people from being laid off, because workplaces, are without capital and need to make immediate investments to make sure that people can either work in the workplace safely or have resources to allow people to work remotely. Because one of the things that I think the role that you all play is being a voice for small business and frankly, medium-sized businesses and even sometimes large businesses that just don't have the big footprint. Understandably, a lot of the reopening conversation has been around our largest employers. But just as an example, some businesses are looking at, not to pick on any particular one, but some retailers happen to sell food. So they qualify as grocery stores. And so they remained open, and people who, needed any kind of thing, whether it was, bathroom supplies or toys or whatever for their kids, could also shop at these retail outlets. And meanwhile, a lot of the mom and pops or smaller or even medium-sized businesses that, that didn't have that diversification to have food, basically had to close down and are competing with online retailers. So one of the things that seems to be happening is that a lot of the largest businesses are nimble enough to be able to adapt, whereas a lot of smaller businesses, medium businesses, just are getting hit a lot harder because they don't have that diversification and they don't have that footprint to survive and adapt. And I know that's a very general comment, but I think to the extent that we are reopening and we can keep that in mind. So for example, the next time around, let's keep that in mind, that yes, people can go to some of the large retailers that just happen to also have groceries, but is there a way that we can allow smaller businesses not to get shut out just because they're small? And one of the things I appreciate at the local government level is that there seems to be a lot of attention to the detail for specific businesses. And, on the one hand, it's a little frustrating. It's almost like we're turning into Singapore, where like every single industry has like all this long list of requirements. But on the other hand, I think that attention to detail is welcome, and we want to support it because it means that, some smaller businesses are getting the attention they need to make sure that they can safely reopen as soon as that is in fact safe.
So, Senator, as you were talking, one of the things that, and I shared with you before, that we have reached out to the state workforce board. We've reached out to the U.S. Department of Labor, the regional office in Atlanta. A couple of my colleagues have implemented a couple items, and we've asked them for some guidance they have and some of the responses we've gotten from their regional U.S. Department of Labor offices so that we can stay within it. And one of the ideas, as you were saying, as these employers are have employees that are working from home, if they are going to have to reshift their position, how to retrain them. And this is where they're using their dollars as a grant to help them get retrained, reskilled while they're there. And for us, the training costs is not only assisting with an outside vendor, but it's also the salaries of those individuals, which again helps that employer, in particular medium to small employer. If we can do that, I think it would be very beneficial to our community. So that's something that right now we are making sure we got an I and cross a T, and that you'll hear from us, and then we can launch that we do it with let you know that it's happening, but also through the Greater Miami Chamber and all the other organizations that are supporting our business. Because it's vital that we help. And I think, the very simplistic layoff aversion strategy that I always would say is that for those who are hearing our voices as we are on this webinar, please support your local business, whether it's a restaurant, order from them locally, whether it's the grocery store, go to them and support them, particularly, the little small mom and pops, the containers that where we can, order. That way they stay in business. They keep folks employed. The ones and twosies, it still means a difference because it means that they're able to help survive in their respective community. That's the one piece, Senator, that I've always said and been promoting, and I know this chamber has been very supportive of saying, hey, Carl, I know if Philippe was here, our chairman, there's a certain restaurant, I forgot the name of the restaurant to give him a plug, but he always mentioned he eats there at least minimum once a week to support that business. And we need to do that. If it's just for a coffee or a salad or whatever, it still helps support, keep that business afloat.
Amen. And one of the things I wanted to ask you too is if you could talk about what you're seeing on the ground with respect to the small business loans, and particularly the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP at the federal level. A lot of us are kind of just hearing what's happening. We're seeing the data. So the second round of the Paycheck Protection Plan money appears to be kind of correcting what a lot of the criticism was from the first round. But are there any lessons that you're hearing just generally from the ground or in the work of CareerSource that are helpful for us as we design these programs or try to stand them up in the future?
Yeah, ironically, before I joined here, I was a little late getting on early, but I was on the phone with a Zoom meeting with Mike Finney and his team and my team. And Mike had shared with me and some of the things that we have heard, that again, the beauty that they saw in the second release of the stimulus, that's what we call it, but those dollars are getting to the people that need to, and there's still dollars available for the businesses. And even on, although the first pot of money is gone, the second pot is still there, and there's still dollars available, but it got to the folks that needed the small employers. The other beauty of it was that it connected with the community banks and the other entities that had connections with the employers that really help build communities. And not that our large employers don't, but again, 90% of the companies in our county are going to be small employers, and all employers are important. But if all of us aren't getting a part of the opportunities, the resources to keep us afloat, that's going to hurt our community. And so what we have seen and what we've heard is that second round did make an impact. It's making an impact because it got to those small employers. Now, for those small employers that still have not have gotten access, please reach out to your community banks. Reach out to them. Make sure you're turning your paperwork in. If you have questions, we have folks at the Greater Miami Chamber that can answer some of the questions that you may need or to understand how the process works. But there are resources that are available. Dollars are still there. We also know that municipalities in certain counties are launching other grant and loan programs to help our businesses stay afloat. And one of the things that I know Mayor Jimenez and the governor has had to take a look at, it is balancing the safety of our community, the balancing the safety of our state and our country, but it's also the balance between having the resources for our governments to respond. So keep in mind, on the federal level, they don't have to have a balanced budget, but state, county, and municipalities have to have a balanced budget. And when you're looking at the resources and the revenue not coming in from whether it's the bed and breakfast tax or the tourism tax, those things impact our governments. And so how we respond of the needs of our community is based on those resources. So I think every elected official who's had to deal with this challenge has had to face an issue of safety, as well as the services that we can offer our citizens, knowing that we have a revenue or a lack of revenue coming in. And so I think we all have to be very cognizant of that. And so we have to be understanding. And so for us, that second round did make a difference. It is making a difference. There's still resources available. And so we want folks that are here, please reach out to the Greater Miami Chamber staff. They're there to be a resource to help your business grow, to help to make sure they stay afloat. Reach out to my staff. And I share with you, Senator, that when we launched the Reemployment Hub, the idea there was to help our residents who cannot get connected or couldn't get access to the Connect system, to find an alternative method of being able to apply for unemployment. So please have them reach out in your district and through region-wide. They can reach us at 305-929-1547. Again, that number is 305-929-1547. So it will help for those workers who have been displaced, who need access to the unemployment system, that they can't get connected or they just want to know. Please reach out. You can hit number 1 for that. Hit 2. We can help employers as well as job seekers get their jobs posted if they're trying to find workers. I saw someone in the chat that was looking for some workers. Please reach out, and I got the number, so I'm going to reach out to them as well. But we can help you post your jobs and help you get those jobs filled. But also those workers who are looking for new opportunities, please reach out to, again, 305-929-1547, or go to employedmiamidade.com. That is a website that you can go to. It's also an app that you can pull down and be able to look for employment there. But it's employedmiamidade.com. If you're in Monroe County, Employed Monroe, go to the website, and we have opportunities to either post or do job search. I see Spencer's here, and so I guess we're getting close to our time, Spencer.
No, we're actually ready to take some questions from the audience, if you folks are ready. And Rick, I'm having some staff post that phone number and the website as well. and you can post them in there if you'd like. Just a quick note regarding PPP and the second round of funding. Senator Rubio had posted last night that as of 5 p.m., the average loan was $71,679, which, for a small business, that's a monthly payroll of about $29,000. So it's looking like, on average, these are helping many small businesses out there, which is, really great to hear. I want to go back to the short-time compensation program. We got a question from an individual who's wanting to know, do I as a worker apply for an STC, or is that my employer? Whose responsibility is it to do that?
That's a great question. It's the employer's responsibility. So it's the employer's initiative to pitch a plan. And the only exception is that if it's a unionized workplace, if it's a workplace subject to collective bargaining, then the employees have a seat at the table in terms of negotiating the plan that is pitched to Department of Economic Opportunity. But you cannot apply for short-time compensation benefits if your employer has not submitted a plan.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Our next question is related to the federal government, but I think it's something you may be able to answer, Rick. It's related to the EIDL. Our question is saying that when is that portal going to be available to non-agriculture entities? Do you know if that's available now or when that's going to change, Rick?
No, I don't. The Department of Economic Opportunity has not informed us, but once I find out, I'll be glad to send that information over to you.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for posting that information, Rick. That's really helpful. Regarding the CARES Act, there's large employers that have more than 500 employees. And, as such, those nonprofits specifically are not able to qualify for those funds. I know that the HEROES Act is being discussed right now in Washington. Do you know if they're looking to try to go after but if they're trying to help nonprofits with funding that have employees over 500? Is that something that either of you or have some insight on?
Again, I had a conversation earlier today regarding my understanding that there is potential legislation that will enable not-for-profits, 501, is it 506s? Am I saying that right, Spencer?
501c3.
501c3. Well, I know not-for-profits that they were looking at an opportunity for them to be able to have access to resources to keep their employees on. I do know there's a number of funders here that have enabled to help. One of the things we have done, Spencer, for agencies that we fund is that I have had a performance-based contract for all my career center operators. I moved that to a cost reimbursement contract for them to continue to do follow-up services virtually, to also do job search services virtually for our folks. I do know the Children Trust and others have switched over to be able to assist not-for-profits with their funding just so to help to keep them afloat. So there's some things that we're doing locally as funders to assist our local agencies. I'm hoping, and this is where the Senator and others should assist in reaching out to our congressional delegation to ensure there's a language there in a potential legislation, funding legislation that comes out to help. Again, there's a bill that I know that deals with workforce that's about $25 billion. And so wherever they can attach an appropriations piece, that'd be great. But Senator, this is where you all may be able to assist those items. And I think Spencer and his connections there will be able to let you know what legislation is there to help kind of proffer support for this, to help our not-for-profits who wasn't able to take access to those dollars.
Thanks for that, Rick. We're getting several questions from attendees who have furloughed staff due to this crisis, and now they're in the process of bringing them back on board. What steps, Senator, should an employee take if they've been furloughed, they've been receiving unemployment benefits from the state? or a company do if they have staff that they are now in the process of recalling? What steps should be taken to shut off some of those resources that they are no longer needing to pull in?
Well, thank you for that question. So since March 15th, the volume of applications to the unemployment compensation system, unfortunately, but not surprisingly, has been very, very, very high. And, again, not to get sort of too polemic, but there's no other state in the country that's had as much of a problem with the backlog. And so about slightly less than half of those whose applications have been processed have received anything. So if somebody's received benefits, that's a great thing. And to be honest with you, quote unquote, turning them off is not a difficult thing. You just report that you found a job, and that's it. And that's a very good thing. We want people to be having that quote unquote problem of being pulled back from furlough. And that's it's great. One thing that I should mention is that for employers that are not able to avoid layoffs, Governor DeSantis and the Department of Economic Opportunity issued a rule back in April that for employers, and this is very large employers that are looking at employment decisions that are going to affect more than 1,000 employees, and that could be, furloughing some, part-time others. If 1,000 or more are impacted, they can basically pre-complete the unemployment assistance application for their employees. And at a time like this, where it's really difficult, that may actually be a benefit to those employees going through that process. So that's one thing to mention. But again, if somebody is coming back to their job off of furlough, that is fantastic. It's very, very easy to quote unquote turn off the unemployment benefits. The problem has been, frankly, turning them on, and I started to laugh, but it's been very difficult for people.
Yeah, absolutely. We know it's a challenge that's being experienced, and I know that you and your team have been working actively in your district to help constituents when they have those types of issues and getting connected. So I want to thank you for that. Going back to STC, one of our questions is, if an employer's plan is approved, the amount of employee compensation by the government, how does that break down percentage-wise? Is it just a set percentage, or does it vary based on your plan? Do you know?
So the way that my understanding that it works is that the benefit is calculated as if it's on a prorated basis. So for that pro rata amount that of hours they're reduced, they get paid at, basically using the state's existing formula. And so it's not very generous, I will tell you. So that if you're partially unemployed and you go through an STC, again, the benefit is that you're not subject to the $333 a week cap, right? So again, if you make $333 per week and you're partially unemployed, you won't get any unemployment benefit at all. But and that's one of the benefits of the STC. But the STC, the benefit level, is computed using the state's formula. So it's not going to be very much, unfortunately. I mean, it could be as low as 100. I mean, the cap is 275. It's going to be less than that. But again, right now at this current moment, any employee that qualifies for unemployment assistance, including through a short time program, will receive the $600 a week additional through the CARES Act through the end of July. So that makes a gigantic difference, I think, for a lot of employees who are facing partial unemployment.
Now, Senator, with that, let's say I'm someone who is unemployed. I'm able to get through and qualify for some level of unemployment benefits. Does that start as soon as I qualify, or does any of that go retroactive? Maybe I lost my job in the middle of March. How is that handled? Do you know?
So because of so many backlogs in the system, many of us were advocating for a retroactivity rule that is, an official emergency rule from the department, either protecting people to the date of job loss, which is different from current Florida law, or saying we're going to hold you harmless for the fact the website wasn't working for this many weeks, and we'll just give you an extra couple weeks, assuming that you were trying to apply during that time, right? There are a number of different ways. They did not give us that rule. Instead, what they gave us was a portal where employees can go and backdate their claim. Now, I want to be very clear. I have every opportunity I've had to tell people, please be cautious if you're an employee. If you cannot substantiate that you were trying to apply but couldn't, I would be very careful about applying. Again, there's no rule protecting it's allowing you to backdate your claim and say I tried to apply at a prior date. So there's a portal you can go to. You can find it on floridajobs.org. But there is no real retroactivity, what I would say. And that also applies for short-time compensation plans. And short-time compensation plans, it's very different because, again, once the plan is approved by DEO, that's when employees can go and complete the application. But if it's not through that program and it's through the regular unemployment system, again, I want to be very clear. People have a chance to go and backdate their claim to a date when they first tried to apply. But I'm not in a position to encourage somebody to do that. I'm not giving legal advice here, but I'm not in a position to encourage somebody to do that unless you have some way you can substantiate, hey, this is the day I went to the website and tried 10 times and failed.
I would direct everyone to the chat to see where those links are. I know that we have staff sharing those, including numbers to CareerSource and Senator Rodriguez's district office. And Rick has just posted an FAQ guide for reemployment assistance that I encourage you to access now and use at your convenience. And as a reminder, this is being recorded and will be shared on miamichamber.com this evening. If you were unable to see this entire webinar, or if you have a friend or a family member that you think could benefit from watching it, feel free to share that resource with them. We're starting to wrap up the call a little bit now, but first to you, Senator, can you talk about things outside of unemployment assistance? What are you doing for constituents, to help them? I know that you've been active with food assistance and some other things. Can you talk for a few moments about number one, what you're doing, and then if there's someone on the call that wants to get more information about that, how can they get access to that information of resources that your office is providing?
No, thank you very much for the question. You can find me on flsenate.gov. You can find my page with my information on there. My number is 305-854-0365. Please reach out. It's hard to summarize all the things that we've been working on for our constituents during this time. Number one, by far, is the unemployment system in terms of the constituent volume, trying to assist there. As you mentioned, food security is a big issue. The Department of Children and Families has, kind of told us that, the SNAP system, so that for people, so not just event-based food assistance, but for those folks who never imagined that they might need food assistance, cash food assistance from the state, I think just encouraging people to understand that that's meant as a bridge. This is an unprecedented circumstance, so don't let stigma get in the way of taking advantage of the SNAP program. You can apply through DCF. My Florida Family is the way to find it online. Reach out to our office as well if you need the application. And and a whole range of other things, just kind of checking on the vulnerable. Again, one of the things that I wanted to mention, a lot of employers that have nothing to do with nursing homes or senior living centers or anything like that have reached out to say, hey, can we help you all with PPE or with other things that you need? So, I want to thank you all for that. But that has also been a large part of what, my role has been in interfacing with the Department of Health, for example. to try to make sure that we have protocols in place to plan for contingencies. What do we do if there are shortages? How do, smaller healthcare providers make difficult decisions and navigate, systems that they really don't, and supply chains that they really don't control, right? So a lot of things that we're doing are just trying to fill in the gaps and try to stay ahead of what we believe is coming. And again, I want to thank you all, because the Greater Miami Chamber has been a huge resource. And, if you had not yet had a chance to hear from Rick Beasley and his team, you did today, and you realize why they're such a great asset and resource for us here too in this community.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for those many ways that you help out. I know from working in a Senate office myself in Tampa that really a big role that is, people see legislation, they see bills, but really one of the unsung resources that a Senate office provides constituents is being that connection point to an agency or another level of government where they're having difficulty getting answers or resources. So definitely want to thank you and your hardworking legislative assistants for being there around the clock for our community.
And just
Rick,
they'll be posting
go ahead.
contact information in the chat. Oh, I'm sorry, they're posting my contact information in the chat as well. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, great, thank you. Rick, just to close this out, I know that you've talked about a lot of resources that CareerSource is doing and engaging in the community. Is there like maybe a best kept secret about CareerSource? Maybe something that is a resource you all provide that may not get immediate buzz from the media, but would be really useful for a resident or someone who is looking to get employed?
Okay, so two things. One, I'm going to do it for the residents and then the employers. The first thing, and I'm posting it here, is Operation Impact. It's an initiative that we launched to help get our citizens re-employed. All right. So again, just use the telephone number that we have, which is again 305-929-1547. They can go in, they hit number 2 because they're looking for employment. If they plug in, once they plug in their zip code, it would directly connect them to the career center that they live next to. All right, and they will get a live person. But there, if you're already in our system, we want you then to, we will help you look for a job or get you into training. But we can pay up to $1,000 for transportation costs, housing, utilities, childcare. But we're helping those individuals who are in our system again get employed. But it helps at least knock out something on the bottom line at the beginning of this piece here. The other item is for our employers. We can offer on-the-job training, customized training, paid worker experience for those employers who are hiring, who are retraining, who are retaining their workers. Here's a way that we can assist them. And oftentimes you don't see CareerSource in that regard of promoting those business services, but they're there. And so we will be launching here, and I know Spencer, you've been with Alfred, but we are finalizing an agreement with the chamber to be more of an outreach force, working with our employers to engage them more. And this chamber, I would tell you, Spencer, I can't thank you and Tanya and the rest of the group, Alfred and Joe. You guys have been fantastic on making sure that the members, the businesses in our respective community are engaged. That we are connected to the resources. You've been fighting to make sure that we have resources in our respective community, which is fantastic. And so our board, our agency really is there to help get people reemployed. So partnering with the chamber makes for a better and stronger community. And so if we keep this in mind, our goal right now, the COVID virus is there. Now we're post. Our goal right now is to build a stronger, better Miami-Dade County. And I think by working with the chamber, working with the senator's office, through boards, the Beacon Council and others, here's how we can truly make a difference. That our companies that we work with stay stronger, that the workers that we have or the folks that have been displaced, we get them reemployed. This is how we can make it work, by continuous dialogue, but implementing certain programs that will make it work. So again, on-the-job training, paid worker experience, customized training, we can do that for employers, Operation Impact for those job seekers. Call 305-929-1547, or go to Employ Miami-Dade, pull down the app or go online to that link.
Thank you, Rick, for those resources and that vital information. This is going to conclude this week's Thursday Roundtables. I encourage you to stay tuned next week. We're going to be talking about trade. We'll have the Consul General from Canada and Mexico. We'll also have Enterprise Florida on board as well. And we're going to be talking about how trade has been impacted by COVID-19 with the new NAFTA that has come about in Washington, how that is helping, or how it has been impacted. And we're also going to have the Florida Chamber of Commerce's Chief Economist, Dr. Jerry Parrish, who's going to give some real insight onto Florida's economy when it comes to trade and how we're prepared to bounce back from this. I want to encourage you all to stay safe, stay healthy, but most of all, stay encouraged. There have been some great resources shared with you today. We all are in this together. It's a cliche that we hear so often, but know that everyone here on this team, the Senator's team, and Rick Beasley's team care about you and want to get you redeployed and back to work. Thank you for your time today and for joining us. Stay safe and God bless.